globally, statistically, arranged marriage is the norm. There are more arranged marriages than not in the world today. It's just that it seems like a very alien concept.
My next guest is no stranger to adventure. At the age of 21, Jemima Khan left the UK to follow her heart, moving to Lahore to marry the now former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan. She spent her early 20s raising 2 children, converting to Islam and acclimatising to a whole new culture. It wasn't until her 30s when she split with Khan and moved back to London as a single mum that she established her career as a successful screenwriter and documentary maker, choosing to tell the adventures of others over her own. Her new film, What's Love Got to Do With It, may be a slight exception to this rule. Starring Lily James and Shahzad Latif, it's split between London and Lahore, following a pair of friends as one goes through the process of an arranged marriage. Jemima, first and foremost, welcome to the programme. I'd never really have had you down as a sort of rom-com lover. Are you?
I like a rom-com that is grounded in reality. I don't go in for big, broad comedies, but yeah, I love, like, Nora Ephron. Anything she's ever written, I absolutely love. I love all the old working title, genre-defining movies. So, yeah, I am. I like a certain type of rom-com. By the way, the director does not call this a rom-com.
No,
he
I can
always
imagine.
says it's not, it's a family drama. And we did specifically choose a director who was not a comedy director. And there was a reason for that, because we wanted, he added another layer of, I think, sort of truth and profundity that perhaps might not have been there if we'd had a broad comedy or rom-com or typical rom-com director.
You don't go directly, Shekha Kapoor, you don't go directly from sort of Bandit Queen to
lols.
to lols, do you? But there are lols. But, people who would be critical of rom-coms, if we can, would sort of describe them as sort of middle-class romantic comedies. So when did you form the idea of subverting the form, or at least using it to encompass an awful lot more than it might normally carry with it?
Yeah, because I have said a few times that I kind of think that, like, we've all been slightly ruined by rom-coms. Definitely our kind of view of love as this sort of, the mythical, transcendental love that's going to complete us, which is a result of our diet of rom-coms, has rather raised the expectations for any mere mortal that one might get into a relationship with. So, but I mean, I'm thrilled you think I have subverted the genre.
Well, you have, to an extent. I mean, you've taken something that seems, on the face of it, extremely unromantic, investigated it, and then illuminated us to the fact that it is very unromantic.
No spoilers.
No, I know, it makes it very difficult, doesn't it? Because some of the things, but really, I mean, when did the story start forming? Because although, and we'll talk about it in a minute, although there are all kinds of sort of slivers of your own experience, obviously observationally and everything else, and in fact, in some places, it's like a sort of love letter to Pakistan. It is also, a romantic story set between 2 kind of clashing cultures, and that must have seeded itself at some point.
Many, many years ago. I mean, when I say many years, I mean actually decades. It took me so long because I was busy with my day job, which was, running a company and producing documentaries. I'd never written anything before. And it took me, it took me a while to get to the point we're at now.
Your own marriage to Imran Khan was very much the opposite of an arranged marriage, I think it would be fair to say. In fact, it was probably the last thing that either family wanted either participant to embark on. When you think back to that time, I mean, do you know what you were looking for, and do you wish you'd been dissuaded?
That'd be a difficult one to answer with my children probably listening into this.
Hopefully they won't be listening. Though, of course, all generations listen to
me now. Well, look, I come from a really long line in unsuitable matches. My parents both eloped against their parents' wishes with their first marriages. And so I don't think they were even that surprised when I ended up marrying someone who was an extremely surprising choice on paper. I think it took a while for everyone to get over the initial shock, both here and in Pakistan. What was your question?
If they had chosen for you, your parents, as unlikely as I know that
Yes,
that is,
they wouldn't have been able to agree, which is a huge relief.
what sort of person do you think you would have ended up with?
I wouldn't have, because they wouldn't have been able to agree on the choice. They just, yeah, that just could never. I can't imagine them ever finding consensus. Because my mother has a very English sensibility and sense of humour. My father was way more European, and yeah, just wouldn't have happened. So, I mean, I'm much more interested actually in the idea of a kind of, a committee of friends making a choice for you. And I think there is actually some sense to that. The idea that you kind of defer to people who know you best makes a lot of sense to me, particularly if you're anyway delegating to something as random as an algorithm, which most of my friends are through dating apps if they're single. Then, why not defer to people who love you most and know you best? It makes perfect sense, especially if you've kind of haven't had a great track record of choosing yourself.
Having gone to Lahore at the age of 21, what was your observation then on, because yours was a love match, but you were in an environment where many of the relationships around you weren't. So how did your experience contrast with what you saw around you?
Well, ours was the only non-arranged, as they call it, love marriage in my ex-husband's entire family history. So there'd been generations and generations of arranged marriage. I lived with his family. So I lived with his father, his sisters, their husbands, their kids. They were all arranged marriages. And even the kids, as they grew up and, were in their 20s, I watched them have arranged marriages and was involved in that process. And I think that's kind of what changed my view a bit, is that I went there with all the kind of quite standard preconceptions about this, maybe kind of conflating arranged marriage a bit with forced marriage, that certainly there wasn't that much consent in my head, and then saw a much more kind of, assisted marriage situation where it basically was an introduction, and some very, very happy marriages. And I started to kind of wonder about this idea that you don't start with love, you end with love, that you walk into love, you don't fall into love, that you simmer then boil. And, these ideas, I took away with me when I came back. And my friends, I was in my 30s when I came back to the UK. And a lot of my friends at that point were thinking about having children and looking for suitable fathers of those children. And so we did start to have a conversation about, okay, if you were to have an arranged marriage, who might your parents choose for you, or or indeed your friends, and would that work if you took the component of instant attraction and chemistry away? What might you end up with? And that was kind of the seed of the idea for the film.
I'm terrified of giving anything away, really, but can I say that, the film does end up in Lahore for a period of time, and it is this incredible, exuberant evocation of Pakistan. And I wondered how much that chimes with your own experience of getting there. I mean, to me, the idea at 21 of embarking on this new life, completely in contrast to how you'd lived before. You'd been a student at Bristol University, you were free, you came from a privileged, situation. You certainly weren't living with all your in-laws and outlaws. So I just wondered how it felt getting there and how difficult or exciting it was to assimilate.
Well, actually, I mean, I'm one of 10 siblings, and I was also living in a house with 6 people at Bristol. So I hadn't actually lived on my own before going there. I went there in my second year of university. So I did finish my degree later.
I was going to say, I thought you finished your degree.
I did. I went back after the 2 children were born. But it was interesting to show us maybe a little more a surprising version of Pakistan that we're perhaps not so familiar with just watching the news. It's often depicted as this kind of scary, dangerous place, and that scary, dangerous things do happen there. But there is also this other side to Pakistan that I also experienced outside of politics, which was fun and vibrant and hospitable and colourful, and so that's what I wanted to reflect in this film a little bit, partly as a reaction to the lament that I heard so regularly from Pakistani friends about how their country and how Pakistanis are depicted on screen in the West, which is very often as the sort of shady ISI operatives or terrorists. I mean, if you look at films like if you look at series like Homeland or films like Zero Dark 30, it's always the Pakistani who's the dodgy baddie.
You've also spoken recently, in particular, about the fact that arranged marriage isn't as far from, our sphere of experience or culture as we like to think, and that your friend, Princess Diana, who visited you a couple of times at least, I think, when you were living in Pakistan, was herself in what was, to all intents and purposes, an arranged marriage. Do you think that we look on it as alien, but actually are self-deceiving on that level?
Yeah, to some extent.
But it doesn't live up to your theory of actually, I just realised, of successful arranged marriage then, does it?
Of course, like everything, it doesn't always work. It's not really a theory in so much as it's very easy to be very disdainful of this other way of finding love. And actually, our way it's pretty random. It's, there are flaws to too much choice as well as too little choice, of course it doesn't always work. And of course, forced marriage has no place in the modern world. But there's something interesting to me about what has come to be known as assisted marriage. And and we did it, in our own royal family, as you've just said, used to practice, it was always arranged marriages pretty much, and not so long ago. And frankly, the rest of the world, actually, globally, statistically, arranged marriage is the norm. There are more arranged marriages than not in the world today. It's just that it seems like a very alien concept.
Culturally, you'll know a lot more about this than I do because you lived for a decade in Pakistan and were a woman, are a woman. But my in my heart, my fear for it is, you look at statistics, I don't know, for honour killings and things like that, and they're pretty horrific. They may not be, gargantuan, but there's enough women are killed in those situations for it to be something to be concerned about, both here in the UK and in Pakistan. And in the film, it starts out as an assisted marriage. That's the concept we're given, and I'm not going to do any kind of spoiling, but that there is a situation that evolves where you might be worried about the person who's making a return.
Look, it's a rom-com.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, look, ultimately it's a rom-com, so you don't have to be that worried. And it's there's been plenty of brilliant documentaries made, not least by my brilliant friend Charmine Obeid-Chinoy on these subjects. And if you want to go and research those subjects, I can highly recommend her films. That's not what this is.
Tell me then about the experience of making the film, of having, going from the germ of the idea, because you were clearly very committed to it. You spent a long time, getting it together and finally realising that kind of dream. What was it that kept you going?
It's a really good question. Actually, I did give up a few times and then I picked it back up. And then I had writer friends who said, you could write something else. And for some reason, I sort of couldn't let it go until I kept thinking, I don't want to write something else until I've finished this. I also had a really good mentor. I had Ol Parker, who is a screenwriter and director, was incredibly kind and very, very generous with his time and read every single draft. And without, he was very careful to never, write an actual line, whilst also, and he would send it back to me with notes, just sort of do better, take the handbrake off. This is embarrassing. Why do you even send this to me? I
don't believe he ever said no.
No, he was very, very honest, but over a really long period of time and incredibly generous. And I might not have kept going if it hadn't been for him, actually.
Were you worried at all about sort of delving into sensitive territory? Your Twitter following is pretty active, I think would be one way of describing it. And of course, being married to Imran, you would have known came with dangers, and in fact, horrifically, those dangers were realised quite recently when there was an assassination attempt on him. So were you worried about even getting close to all of the stuff that instantly creates frenzy?
Look, it's a good question, and it's a balancing act, and I'm not through it yet. But I have to say, I've been really touched and frankly quite relieved by the British Asian response and the response of my Pakistani friends who have really loved the film, and that's meant a lot and has been really, really important to me.
What were you most worried about and least worried about? I mean, I think that you've made a pretty good job of trying to tackle some of the sort of cultural expectations and things that we don't notice. I mean, you're the mother of two half Pakistani boys, and so I presume that line about going to the airport early in order to be randomly selected was based on perhaps your own experiences.
It was, yeah. Literally I genuinely have to look at our transit time if we're going to America, if I'm with the kids, and it's different if I'm not. My passport's in the name of Goldsmith, and theirs is in the name of their non-Anglicized Pakistani, Muslim, or Arabic names. And it does make a difference. We'll miss the connection if I go with them, and we won't if I'm not. And so a lot of this stuff I've witnessed through kind of their eyes as well.
What, in terms of if the film does move any goalposts, what would you like to see it achieve? Because it is in some ways a kind of call out to, celebrating difference and actually understanding, different cultures in a way, rather than judging immediately that your own is preferable, which is often the sort of instant reaction of the kind of liberal elite, as we've both witnessed in recent years.
I mean, frankly, it's now doing a really good job as a tourist ad for Pakistan. I've had so many people saying, I can't wait to go and booking a ticket. And unfortunately, we didn't get to show the beautiful northern areas, but I was very, very specific about exactly which buildings, I wanted the car to pass in Pakistan and where scenes would be shot, because there is, incredible architecture that is not very well known in Lahore, and the music as well. I mean, I'm obsessed by the soundtrack and our original wedding song, which had such an incredible mix of talents. Rahat Fateh Ali Khan, who's the Sufi singer who plays himself in the film, also played at my wedding. He played at our Walima in the garden. I used to go on tour with his uncle, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, who was like pretty much the most famous South Asian singer of his day. And on that song, the soundtrack is created by Nitin Sawhney, who's a brilliant British Indian composer. Naughty Boy collaborated with him on the wedding song. We've got Kanika Kapoor, who also sings it. We've got Lily James, who does vocals. So it was just amazing to kind of bring together and see all these incredible talents collaborating. And I hope that it does celebrate British Asian talent, Pakistani talent, Pakistan in a way that hopefully is which is quite unusual, I think, in mainstream films.
Did you love Pakistan? I mean, was it a positive experience for you? Because I do imagine that it must have been quite difficult. You're a part Jewish girl that Imran Khan had met in a restaurant in Knightsbridge. It didn't bode well for great acceptance.
I always say I'm 25% Jewish here and 250% Jewish in Pakistan. But that's particular to politics. I mean, politics everywhere is hell. It's arguably even more hellish in a country like Pakistan, and arguably more dangerous. So that was unfun. But Pakistan itself is I see it as separate, and I think I also would have had a very different experience were it not for the political angle and the scrutiny that came as a result of that. And I kind of see Pakistan like a beloved, maddening relative. I sort of grumble about it sometimes. I sometimes find it maddening, but if anybody else criticizes, I spring to its defense and feel furious.
I think it was your half-sister, India Jain, who said you went there looking for moral certainty at the age of 21. I wondered if you found that, and if that was perhaps what your friend, Princess Diana, also found incredibly appealing and seductive about Pakistan and perhaps her relationship with the Pakistani doctor.
I can't answer for Princess Diana or for Hasnat, unfortunately, because you'd have to ask him. And as for me, I thought it was an interesting observation that my sister made, because, you know, there is some reassurance, particularly when you're younger, going to a place where everything is the answers are very black and white. There aren't that many shades of grey, and that applies to the religion and the culture and even the man that I married, you know, and when you're quite unsure and uncertain, I think that can be quite reassuring. It can also later on feel restrictive.
I hope it's not too much of a spoiler to say that in the end you've gone all out for romantic love.
That's
to be
a
honest.
real spoiler.
Well,
yes,
it's a rom-com.
Cut.
Are you a romantic? I mean, I know you've talked about the fact that you wish that you had your committee of friends or indeed parents who could have agreed in order to perhaps choose more suitably for you. But in the end, isn't it the half the fun, choosing and the chemistry and all of those things? Or are you weary of that side of it? And would you still like someone to kind of go, here you go, Jemima, this is the right person for you?
I also don't think you're right that it ends on necessarily on an all-out. Hold on, let me say this in a way that isn't a spoiler. Okay.
It's a rom-com. I think a happy ending people expect.
Well, I guess it's define happy, isn't it? I mean, for me, I'm not sure about happy ever after. I think, you know, take it day by day, you know, and so far so good is fine for me. I am
so unromantic.
Well, exactly. That's
So
why
far,
I'm
so
disputing
good.
what you've just said. And also, I am. Well, that kind of reflects me because I am definitely half cynic, half romantic, and I think maybe that's reflected in this script.
Did you learn anything in writing it?
In writing it, yeah. I mean, I learned completely how a film gets made. I'd never done this, but I'd never made a scripted feature film before, and I was very, very lucky as a producer on it to be involved in every aspect of it. So right the way through from, you know, being on set every day through to the edit and the grade and the sound mix, everything. So I mean, I think you mean philosophically, but I mean practically
I sort of meant
speaking.
I didn't mean your skill set. I meant emotional skill set.
Well, I'm sticking with the practical learning. Thank you.
Jemima Khan, absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mariella.